Welcome everyone to tonight's lecture. It's my pleasure to introduce William O'Donnell, who is from the Norfolk County Registry of Deeds. And by virtue of that office, he has served as an assistant recorder of the Massachusetts Land Court. Prior to his tenure as a register, he has served for 10 years as an elected county commissioner for Norfolk County and as a trustee of Norfolk County's highly regarded agricultural high school. He previously served as a member of the Democratic State Committee and the Norwood Planning Board. He is a graduate of Boston College Law School, Georgetown University, and Xavier Brothers High School. Mr. O'Donnell was admitted to the Massachusetts Bar in 1985, and he has served as Assistant District Attorney for Norfolk County and remains active in local and regional bar activities. Register O'Donnell and his wife Susan live in Norwood with their 3 children. I hope that hasn't changed. He's a member of the, you never know, surprise us. He's a member of the Norwood Democratic Town Committee and has volunteered as a coach in Norwood's youth, say that 5 times fast, Norwood's youth baseball and hockey programs. Please join me in welcoming William O'Donnell, who will speak about the ongoing and future projects at the registry.
Thank you. I still think I'm married. I don't think I got, as of this morning anyway. But Joan, thank you very much for that introduction. Joanna told me if you have cell phones, turn it off. But it's really an honor to speak here. You're so lucky in Dedham to have this jewel of a building. I've been in here a number of times, did some research on some of the projects that we'll talk about tonight, and it's really a jewel, to have the Dedham Historical Society Museum. And I know you've had great speakers in the past, and when Joanna asked me to speak, I said, listen, I don't tell great jokes. I'm not the most dynamic speaker. You've had all these great speakers in a lecture series. Why do you want me? And Joanna said she was desperate for a speaker, so that's why you got stuck with me tonight. The Registry of Deeds has been in Dedham since 1793, and we'll talk about that a little later. It was a labor of love. I went to school down in Washington. I love history. And it's the 225th anniversary of Norfolk County, so please take home one of the blue books commemorating Norfolk County's 225th year. And the registry's been here since 1793 here in Dedham. And it is a sleepy arm of government. And I was asked to talk a little bit about what the registry does, and then, the here and now, I guess, and then talk a little bit about some of the historical stuff that in the research that's available. It is a sleepy arm of government, but when you think about it, the biggest asset you have is your home. And that's what the registry deals with. And I think the mission is probably the same as it was in 1793. The register, that first register, wanted to make sure the records were recorded accurately, they were secure, that people can rely on them, and that the community can rely on them, and for title. So when you think about it, the biggest part of our economy in many respects, here in Dedham, regionally, nationally, is the real estate market. And if you can't rely on title, houses aren't getting built, commercial development isn't taking place. But that being said, I think the here and now is that we've modernized the registry. I was asked to talk a little bit about what we've done as far as that goes. So the registry was a sleepy arm of government. When I got there was literally a year's worth of mail sitting in boxes that hadn't been recorded. And some of that, in fairness, was a function. It was tremendously busy back in 2002, 2003, when I became Register of Deeds. But part of it was there was a paralysis of paper. And some of the modernization efforts that we've initiated, and believe it or not, I still play hockey. I do coach hockey, but I still play. The trouble is I'm getting too old. They're too young. I'm playing with kids I coached. But one thing you learn from sports, there's no I in team. So when I mention the things that have been done, it's because we've got a good team at the registry, and we have two people here today, that Bob and Alicia from my staff, that hopefully if you need us to look up anything later on, we will. So what did our team do at the Registry of Deeds? Well, we brought in a new computer system, a new document management system. It allowed for things like instantaneous recording, and it created efficiencies. And we brought new equipment in, and the workers embraced it. Sometimes people don't embrace change. There's a union at the registry. My dad climbed poles for 38 years for the Boston Edison. He was a member of a union, so that didn't bother me. You work with people. And the people in the union and the people down at the registry embrace change and allow them to do their job better. We try to run it like a business. For instance, when I first got there, and just know your records are protected. When I first got there, the person that was retiring, I said, where do you protect the records? Where's all the backup? And the person opened their desk and said, it's all in there. We don't do that. Now, by law, we have to microfilm. Every document has been microfilmed. It gets shipped to Iron Mountain in New York and in Massachusetts. And you might say, well, wait, that's not the best form of business continuity planning, to microfilm. And we've done a few other things, but think about some of the things that have happened in New Orleans or down in Houston with floods. Records, you have to recreate the record. So I'm comfortable that because we've microfilmed it, it would be a struggle, but we can recreate every record if there was some type of disaster, and hopefully there won't be. But the Charles River is pretty close by, so you never know. What are some of the other business continuity planning initiatives we did? We were the first registry to put a generator in. So with all these snowstorms, and luckily there hasn't been too many this winter, we don't shut down. We don't force the employees to come in when the governor's shutting down the roads. I'm from Norwood. A couple of us get in, and we keep the registry open. And every snowstorm, we've had somebody say, I'm so glad you stayed open because we needed to get this recording taken care of. We needed to get this sale done. So again, trying to take a sleepy arm of government and trying to apply modern business practices to that. It has been kind of a challenge at the registry, but that's what we've been doing. We created a little disaster recovery office. It's down, the county administration building is next door. We have a little office there, and believe me, it will be a struggle to get up and running. But if something happens down at our beautiful building down the street, we can come to this building. We have the computers all set up and get recordings going. And again, it will be a struggle, but at least we'll keep it going, and that's part of our disaster recovery planning. So, we're trying to be a modern operation. One of the best things we've done, and that will tie into what we're going to talk about later, is the Internet Land Record Research. That's probably the initiative I'm most proud of. It has been the development of online Internet Land Record Research. If you go to our website at www.norfolkdeeds.org, you can go back to the first document from 1793 and view it over the internet. And in the green folder, we have some information there. There's a kind of a tannish document. We have you can connect to our IT department. So if there's plugins, there's things like that. It's free access. It's just as if you walked into the registry. So if you have any questions, you can call our IT department and get research going from there. And please check our website. Usually in the fall and the spring, we have a computer seminar. And we open it up to the public. It started when we put that new system in. We opened it up to the users of the registry. But we've been doing it now for years. And we have a lot of people come in from Dedham saying, hey, I've driven by this building for 20 years. I've never been inside it. So they come in and we teach them a little bit about how to do the research and what to look for. And it's helpful. So check your website for that. But on the right-hand side of the green folder is a document called Norfolk Deeds Computer Assisted Research Guide. And if you're interested in doing some research, a lot of the people that come to our seminars said they took that document home. It's very detailed, and they said they just went onto their computer and it really was helpful. So, if you can't come by the registry to kind of learn about it, learn about the research, there is information in the green folder that you can look up. Now, what is on the registry website? Well, first of all, one thing that's on it, before we get into the research, is good information about real estate. There's information for first-time home buyers. It doesn't matter. Dedham's a great town. I'm from Norwood. Every great town has had people struggling with foreclosure. There's information on there for people that are struggling with foreclosure. If you know anyone in that situation, tell them to go to our website, because they really should, get advice and counsel, immediately, and don't wait till the sheriff's at the door doing a foreclosure sale. And the thing about what we have done on our website, we've partnered up with two nonprofit groups. There's Neighbor Works of Southern Massachusetts and Quincy Community Action Program. They're nonprofit. They don't charge people. They give people some guidance. They give people some advice. There's a financial literacy component to both those organizations. And they also have that hard conversation if the people, sometimes we're just one mistake away from being in that situation, whether you lose a job or you had a health situation, and these groups try to help people get through that. But sometimes they also have that hard conversation to help them transition to housing and to rental property. If you go on our website, besides those two nonprofit organizations, we also have a link to the Attorney General's office, which has a lot of resources to help people. So we do have some real estate information, but we also, and why we're here, you're interested in history, is the research. If you go on that website, and it didn't happen overnight. As I said, I have a great team. We're integrated now back to 1793. So there's over 8.5 million images that are in our library. And as I said, the first document was recorded in Foxborough. You went to book 1, page 1, the first document is viewable. When we first started the index, if you ran my name, Bill O'Donnell, it was every Bill O'Donnell back to the 1990s and then the 70s. Well, we're back to 1793 now. So if you run a name, in a lot of the deeds that it was great participating with your great organization. We brought copies of some of the deeds that are over there. If you run John Adams's name, anything with John Adams comes up, and you can look at the deeds. In fact, we're so fortunate in this county. Think about it. Joanna mentioned we're the county of presidents. Now, don't look to the right, but what 4 presidents were born in Norfolk County? Yes. John Adams, John Quincy Adams, John F. Kennedy. A lot of people until recently didn't realize George Herbert Walker Bush was born in Milton. And the storyboards you see here to my left are actually pages in the blue book that's entitled Norfolk County Registry of Deeds. We celebrated the 225th anniversary in June, and we did each page. We did easels around the registry, and it was great. So there's 4 presidents. So you can look up the information. All that information is integrated on our website. It's integrated in the indexes. If you like history, we also put from the 1793 to 1955 the old scanned indexes. So those were the actual indexes that the scriveners ended up writing out. And a lot of people like to look that up for historical purposes and just to do some research. One of the things that we've done recently, and it was in conjunction with the 225th anniversary, it's probably on page 7 or 8 of your book. It says, Norfolk County Registry of Deeds, History Comes Alive. Well, we've been working on a transcription project, and from 1793 to 1900, all those documents were handwritten, and you can see some of the handwriting over here. And when I started the project, I love history, and our team started the project, and we worked in conjunction with IBM. There was over 450,000 documents that were recorded between 1793 and 1900. In 1900, the register at that time, Register Bertigan, he probably came to this society and said he modernized the registry. They put the typewriter in, which is what they did. They started typing the documents, so it was easy to read. But everything prior to 1900 was handwritten. And I think Register Bertigan, who resided here in Dedham, did try to transcribe, because we found evidence of the handwritten documents were transcribed. There was maybe a book where they tried to type it out. And it probably was so difficult, they ended up quitting, because it is a big project, and it just never got done. So we finished that in conjunction with the 225th anniversary. So every one of these documents, we started with the deeds, and then we did every other document, whether it was mortgages, discharges, we transcribed. So if you enter book 1, page 1, you can hit the view button, you can view the legal document, which is the handwritten document. But if you hit another button, it's like a little T, the typed version of that document comes out. And I'm a big believer. We have a lot of history here in Norfolk County, a lot of history here in Dedham, and history can't come alive if you can't read it. And you can see, if you go to page 7 or 8 in this book, you can see the handwritten document and then the typed version. And it's just a lot easier to read. The title examiners, and again, our mission is really about the law practice, about the real estate economy. The title examiners, the lawyers, love it. But more and more people are using the Registry of Deeds for genealogical and historical research. They want to do research on their home. They want to see who lived in their home. And we've gotten great feedback, because now it's easier to read. And there's a lot of times some interesting information in these deeds. For instance, when John Adams, he deeded some land to the city of Quincy, or the town of Quincy at the time, and he did it in memory of John Hancock. John Hancock was the first governor here in Massachusetts. He was the president when they were trying to decide on the Constitution. More importantly, he signed legislation that established Norfolk County in 1793. But in this document, John Adams talks about what a great patriot John Hancock was, and all the things he did to start this country. In another document, John Adams says he believes that Latin and the classics should be taught in school. So there's a lot of things in these documents that are about real estate, but actually open a world into what people thought back then. And in some of the deeds, they list everything in the house back in 1800, all the little items that were included in the house. And so you get a kind of a glimpse into history. Another reason why I'm kind of glad I did it, I don't know if you have children. I have 3, but we had started this transcription project, and luckily my youngest is graduating college in the spring. But when he was graduating from high school, I noticed a lot of his friends, you're at the graduation parties, they don't know penmanship. Now, I went to St. Catherine's in Norwood. I knew penmanship. The Sisters of St. Joseph made sure, among other things, made sure you knew penmanship. But I don't think a lot of the new generation knows how to read penmanship, and that's another story for another day. But, at least, I hope it doesn't happen, but at least by transcribing them, you are making the documents readable, because a lot of the newer generation, especially being on the iPhones and everything, I'm not so sure in a couple of generations people are going to know penmanship. But anyway, yes.
Some of these, I've read some of these old documents or tried to read them. It's very difficult to read. How do you ensure the accuracy of transcribing?
And we being a lawyer, we put that disclaimer there. The question, and I'm repeating the question because I was asked to by Dedham Cable, and I thank them for filming. I'm from Norwood, and I'm getting filmed in Dedham. This is a big thing, But really, when there was a question on the transcribed version, we put a question mark. It really comes down to kind of the quality. Yes, there could be mistakes. The disclaimer is this: the legal document is the written document. We did the transcribed one more to augment research, but and the lawyers understood that. And we're still open to it. The beauty of doing this too is, if people see that we made a mistake, we can go back in and do it again, because it's not the legal document. So we trust that we've tried to do the best we can, but I'll tell you, it was hard reading the penmanship and things like that. So there could be mistakes, and even in some of the typed versions, you'll see question marks. It's because we couldn't tell what the word is. Yes, sir?
Briefly, the technology
No, well, I was mentioning to Coco earlier that a lot of it was they just went through it, and even though it was handwritten, some of them actually had their own forms. You know how we have forms now? They had their own kind of form that it might have been all handwritten out, but they were using a form. So, you could kind of pick up on that. So there were some documents they could see kind of the form and they would match up the words. But it wasn't scanning. It was people just sitting there going page by page. So I mentioned my son's graduating from college, and we started it before he graduated high school. So it was a good, probably 5 or 6 year project. Yes, ma'am.
How many people did it take to transcribe all those documents in that amount of time?
There was a team with IBM. There was probably about 40 people, working. They worked. That was their full-time job. So it was a big project. But again, and I want to make sure, we had done a lot of the other things. I could never have done this project if I hadn't felt like we had modernized the operation so that we could do it. For instance, there's 21 registries around Massachusetts. Not all of them, they're working toward it, are back to year 1 of their existence, So I would never have done this project except all our information is online. We have electronic recording, which, just so you know, electronic recording, we're one of the few registries that are doing that. In fact, we're a pilot program for the land court in Boston, where an attorney here in Dedham can do a closing, do it in their office, check to make sure there's no liens, and then transmit that document over the internet to record. Now, we love people coming to Dedham. I encourage that. We want to, but Dedham, they can walk down. That might be a bad example, but even some attorneys in Dedham use electronic recording because they just find it much more efficient, But the Bar Association had asked us to do it. So think about it. There's 28 communities in Norfolk County. An attorney down in Bellingham can do the closing in his office and then transmit the documents. And the reason why I mention it is there were a lot of modernization initiatives I felt like we already addressed, so then I could do the fun stuff. I like history, could get into that transcription project so that the documents can be relevant. And on page 7, I love reading David McCulloch. He actually wrote a letter, and part of his letter is here, where he actually says for somebody who spent a lot of time struggling reading documents, he actually congratulated us on doing this project. So, for people that are interested in research or looking up their homes, it will be hopefully worthwhile. Yes?
So have all the documents have never been transcribed in the years 1793 to 1900?
Yes, because in 1900, I wasn't joking, that guy typed it, so they're easy to read, register verticant, but from 1793 to 1900, we've transcribed every document. There were over 450,000 documents, and they've been transcribed, and therefore there. And I'll talk a little bit more about history, but to kind of weave back into, making the registry relevant, in the green folder there's some information that, you might already have done, but you might have, children or grandchildren or nieces and nephews that take the information to them. For instance, there's a document in there, where has my bank gone? Not to worry people, but, it involves discharges. We all have to borrow money. I have 3 children, and the youngest is, all 3 went to college. Well, the bank records a mortgage down at the registry, down at that beautiful building. Well, they record it to make sure they get paid. Now, when that loan gets paid off, just make sure a mortgage discharge has found its way to the registry. And you can look up this information if you want. You can look up to see if the discharge did. The discharge is a 1 or 2 page document that tells the world that loan has been paid off. And the reason why I mention it, sometimes I can see people glazing over, but when I've done these talks before, the people said, I went through that trying to track my discharge down, and I wish somebody had mentioned that to me. And I mention it not to worry people, but When you go to sell your house or refinance, you don't want that call, 3 days before the closing saying, hey, by the way, where's the discharge? And the reason in the green folder, again, we have a document, where has my bank gone, is people forget, in the 1990s, some banks went out of business, other banks have merged. I grew up in Norwood. They had the Union Warren Bank. I think it's Citizens. I wouldn't bet the farm on it. But we have state and federal contact information where you can contact and find out where your bank's gone. Well, why do we have that? I'm a big believer in community banking. You got great community banks here in Dedham, and they're around the county. If you need a discharge, you go down to the local community bank. They give you great customer service. They'll probably look it up. The bank vice president's around the corner. They'll get you the discharge and give it to you. But some of these bigger banks, and they're getting better, they don't necessarily give you the good customer service. So you have to make sure that discharge found its way to the registry. And I have people say, well, was that my responsibility? No, it really wasn't. The bank should have done it. I always tell people when we do customer service or we're down at the office hours that we have around the town halls, around the county, hey, go to the lawyer that did the closing, see if the discharge is in the file. But ultimately, it's our property and it's our responsibility. And unfortunately, it shouldn't be. The other party should have taken care of it. And in fairness to some of the bigger banks, a lot of times, sometimes they send you the discharge, because we've seen that at office hours. People are like me, they're type A, they bring all their paper with them. And sure enough, the discharge is in the pile of paper there. It's just no one made it clear that that discharge should get taken to the registry and recorded. So that's just kind of a consumer issue to be aware of. Other consumer issues, scams. There's all kinds of scams. I used to work in the district attorney's office. It's amazing what people do to try to take advantage of other people. There's one kind of scam. For $15, they kind of target the elderly on this. They'll get you a copy, they'll get you a homestead form. Now, I mentioned if you're good with the computer, you can go on our website and download a homestead form. And we actually have homestead forms in this green book, and I'll talk about the homestead in a minute. But if you know somebody that's getting that solicitation, don't pay $15 for a blank form. They don't even fill it out for you. It's a blank form. So it's shameful that it happens, but it happens. And the best thing I could do is talk it to people. The best way to get even is just make people aware of it. Another scam, and it's in here in the book, is a deed scam. There's an article. Ignore the title. It's a terrible title. Dirty Deeds Not Done Cheap, and it has my picture holding $2. Not a good look. No elected official wants to be in the Herald, but they wrote about this because this group was soliciting people, sending out letters, referring them to their website. They used a Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. address, and you would think you couldn't get up in the morning if you didn't have a certified copy of your deed, and they were charging $60 for it. But they would come to the registry and pay $2. Now, I know we've written to the past Attorney General, the new Attorney General, the Secretary of State, and they've put out consumer advisories, and I recognize they say it's legal because in the fine print they say it's a solicitation, and you can hardly read the fine print. But if you know anyone getting that solicitation for $60, come to the registry. As a matter of fact, we have Alicia and Bob here. When we do these events, we certify the deed for free. So, don't be paying $60. And if you need a copy of your deed tonight, that's the beauty of the whole modernization. We have our computers all set up, ready to go. And it's as if the registry is here at the Dedham Historical Society Museum. We can get you a certified copy of your deed. Now, at least that group, it's unconscionable that outfit was doing the solicitation. But at least you got a certified copy of your deed. There's a new group, and again, the reason I mention it is Hank Phillippe Ryan, about 6 months ago, did a story on this at the Dedham Registry, and it's because it's still happening. This group doesn't even give you a certified copy of your deed. They give you, it's called a document processing fee. It looks like a tax bill, and people think it's a bill, and they just write out a check to these people, and they send you a copy of your deed, the tax rate, a lot of the information that you can get free probably from the Dedham website, looking up the information on your assessed value of your home and things like that. So if you know anyone getting that solicitation, please tell them, I know it's illegal, but I think it's shameful. I think it's unconscionable. Just tell people to be aware of it. And if they need any information, come by the Registry of Deeds. We're at 649 High Street. When I mentioned the computerization, you can come by the registry. Those computers aren't just for the lawyers and the title examiners and the engineers. Anyone can use those computers. We have 50 of them around the building. Or I mentioned my dad, Klein Pulse for the Edison, when we were, you're talking about what you're doing over at work and how we're modernizing and putting everything on the computer. My father said to me, well, remember, some of us don't know anything about computers, don't care to know anything about computers, don't want to know anything about computers. So we do have a customer service center. We created a customer service center. So we have staff in the computers, and we can look up the information or try to answer the questions. And again, one other thing I'll talk about, only just to make it's great. We're here to talk history, and I'll answer any question about what we've done historically. But the Homestead, there's information in your green folder about the Homestead Act. It's written into the state legislature for a reason. It's part of state law, and it's under Chapter 188. It means different things in different states, but in Massachusetts, people can declare an estate of homestead on their principal property. Now, why would you do that? Well, I try to say it like this. There's some things a homestead, everyone's playing poker lately, but there's some things homesteads don't beat. If you don't pay your taxes here to Dedham, they can take your property by tax title. If you don't pay the bank, as we mentioned earlier, they can foreclose on you, even if you have a homestead. But most of us probably drove here to Dedham, to the museum here tonight, and you're in a car. And sometimes you think you have a lot of insurance on your car. Maybe you have $100,000 worth of insurance if you hit somebody. And you hit someone in a crosswalk and they have a $400,000 case against you. Well, your insurance company at some point is probably going to pay that $100,000, and they're going to look to you for the other $300,000. And one of the biggest assets we have is our homes. If there's a homestead declared at the registry, they can't force the sale of that home. And that's probably the best protection. It was mentioned in my introduction, I've been an attorney since 1985, and I know attorneys sometimes get a bad rap. You ask them an opinion, 10 different attorneys get 10 different opinions. But I bet you 9.9 out of 10 would say you should have a homestead recorded, to protect your house. And there's little other benefits that are in the Homestead Act. For instance, if you go to sell your home, if you have a homestead recorded, the creditors can't swoop in and try to get the proceeds of the sale. Again, protected for a limited period of time, 1 year. Maybe your house burnt down and the insurance company gave you a check to rebuild. If you have a homestead recorded, your creditors can't come in and swoop in for that insurance check proceeds. They give you 2 years under the statute to kind of get your house rebuilt. So there's a lot of good things in the Homestead Act. The good news is, and you can thank your local legislators, if you haven't declared an estate of homestead, and it's a relatively modest filing fee of $36 compared to some of the other fees down at the registry. But if you haven't done that, there is an automatic homestead in Massachusetts. That was done on March 16, 2011, that you have an automatic homestead. The protection is only $125,000, and it gets apportioned depending on who owns the property. But right now, the homestead statute gives you $500,000 of protection. So for me, for $36, I would record a homestead. The other thing to be aware of, if you have recorded a homestead, and I fell into this situation, I'll give you my personal experience. I was refinancing. I can mention I have kids, in college and things like that. So nice local community bank, great rate, love going with the community banks. I said, why do you have this sentence in here? If I don't pay you, you can foreclose on us. A lot of times banks put a one sentence, no one reads the 30 pages on the mortgage, it killed your homestead. And some lawyers would say, oh, don't worry about it. Well, I didn't want 20 years from now someone saying, hey, when you refinance, when your children were in college, you killed your homestead. So I just put another one on. Thank your local legislators. They listened to the registers and other consumer groups. They wrote in a statute that if that language is in there, it doesn't kill your homestead. But again, that statute went into effect March 16, 2011. So if you put a homestead on before March 16, 2011, and you refinance before March 16, 2011, you might want to take a look at the records. We can do that tonight for you if you want, and just take a look just to make sure, because it's just worthwhile. Hopefully you never need a homestead, but it's worthwhile having. So again, that's just another kind of consumer issue. One of the things I'm passionate about is at the registry. As I said, many people say registry. Wait, how can you be passionate about that? Well, I'm passionate about history, but also about helping people out. And the biggest asset most of us have are our homes, and that's what the registry deals with. And again, many of you might have a homestead, but if you don't, or if you know someone that doesn't, take one of our green folders and give it to them, because what I'm talking about tonight, there's 28 communities in Norfolk County, but this is Massachusetts law, so if they live down in Plymouth County or in Suffolk County, in Boston, these laws still apply to them, and they should get a homestead. I don't know if anyone has any questions or any questions about the history of it. There's a lot of great history. We talked about the 4 presidents. I mean, there are deeds. How many counties have a deed from the 2nd president of the United States, John Adams, to the 6th president of the United States, John Quincy Adams? There's just a lot of great history, here in Dedham. I want to commend the Dedham Historical Society and this beautiful museum. I mentioned at the beginning of the talks, it's such a jewel. I come in here and you just learn so much every time I come in here, and and you got a great staff. You've always had a great staff here, and your new staff continues that great tradition. And back here we have a bell from Paul Revere, and Paul Revere, it was the first court put on the first courthouse in Dedham, and the registry, just to tie in the history, the registry has always been here in Dedham. Dedham is the Shire town. And it was in the courthouses, but I guess I keep mentioning my kids tonight. I don't know why, I don't know why, but hey, he's graduating in May. I'm getting a pay raise, so that's good from college. But the interesting thing, in the blue history book, the 225th, we list, there's only been 11 registers since 1793, but I was always kind of intrigued. Captain Elephant Pond was this Revolutionary War figure who was the elected first register. And I was always intrigued that here he is, a Revolutionary War, a veteran, first register. And from 1793 to 1796, guess where he kept the registry records, because the courthouse wasn't ready? In his dad's house. So even back then, Dad was taking care of the kids. So there's a lot of interesting history. And some of the history I found here, I was intrigued. If you look at the, for instance, I probably shouldn't say this, but the 11 registers, when Captain Pond passed away, they appointed someone named Ford, F-O-O-R-D, and I was always intrigued that Mr. Ford served as the register, and he was from Milton, but he was smart enough back then to move to Dedham. Dedham was the political powerhouse back then. So when he dies, his son gets appointed. And then he dies, and his son gets appointed. So there was 3 Fords. And the last Ford went out to California for the gold rush. And I was really intrigued. I said, oh, well, they finally had transparency. They had a new election. This guy, John Burdekin, Mr. Burdekin got elected and served a long time. And actually, he was the one that was instrumental in building that registry. And then when he died, they appointed his brother. But in doing research, when I was doing researches here, guess what I found when I did research here? The Fords and the Burdekins, they were cousins. So Ford brings in his cousin before he leaves to go to California to make sure he's all taken care of. So a lot of great history, and there's a lot of great history here in this building and in the records here, and it's great. Yes?
Has it always been an elected position?
Yes, the question was the Registry of Deeds always an elected position? Yes, the Registry of Deeds position has been. It actually was written into the Massachusetts Constitution, and since 1793, it's Register of Deeds. I always get, how come it's not registrar? And I was told that registers deal with old stuff, dating back to England, whereas the registrars, like the registrar of motor vehicle, deals with it. Yeah, a more modern thing. But it's in the statute since 1793. It's been elected, and again, it's worked well this many years. I never envisioned myself as Registry of Deeds. It's funny, what's that saying? Life happens, while you're planning. When you're planning, life happens. I enjoyed it. I was in the courtroom a lot. I did real estate a lot. When I had the private practice, I loved working as an assistant district attorney. I'm a big believer in public service. I worked for Bill Delahunt as an assistant district attorney. When I was down at school in Washington, I worked for Congressman Moakley for 3 years. And Congressman Moakley taught you, to take care of the constituents and try to do a good job. And probably much like many of you, when I came back from Washington, D.C., I lived at home. I went to law school, went to Boston College Law School. At a relatively young age, looking at it, I got elected in Norwood. So I'm a big believer in public service. But I've also been in the private sector, and that's what I've tried to do is, take what you learn from the public sector, whether it's locally or through people like Joe Moakley. You see things that government can do well, but in the private sector, you see things that government can do a little better, and that's what we've tried to do at the Registry of Deeds. And one last modernization thing I should talk about. I mentioned all those frauds that are going on. We were the first registry to do a consumer notification service. If you go online, you can sign up to get an email. And sometimes people don't want to get emails, but I'll say this, I signed up myself. What's the consumer notification service? Well, the FBI says one of the fastest growing white-collar crimes is property and mortgage fraud. Colleagues out in the West, in the Midwest, and recently there was something in Philadelphia where there's been frauds going on. I haven't seen it in Norfolk County. I haven't seen it here. But if it's happening elsewhere, it's going to happen. And what type of frauds? Well, what this consumer notification service does is send you an email. Anytime a document gets recorded at the registry, or for that matter, when we're doing back indexing, even touched, you get an email. Now, I'll get an email for every William O'Donnell document that comes through, and you might think that's a pain. I recognize that. But I'll look it up, or if you don't want to look it up, or you can't look it up on your computer, you call our customer service center, and they'll do the information for you. Well, I look at the document. Oh, it's William J. O'Donnell. I'm William Patrick O'Donnell. Doesn't involve me. Oh, that's William T. O'Donnell. That doesn't involve me. But there could be a time I get that email, and all of a sudden I look and say, wait a minute, that's the deed to my house. I didn't sign that. Or that's a mortgage that someone's borrowing money on my house. I didn't sign that. Now, we didn't prevent the fraud. I want to make sure this consumer notification service does not prevent the fraud. But we have links to the law enforcement agencies around Norfolk County where you can get on it right away. And for me, the inconvenience of going through the email is outweighed by the fact that, unfortunately, we live in a society where there's a lot more scams and frauds going on, and it's just a matter of time that they're going to start trying to, do that. Look what's going on with credit cards and phishing expeditions. So take a look at it. It's the Consumer Notification Service. We do it, and again, the biggest asset you have is your home, and it's just a way. You're not going to prevent the fraud, but you can get on it right away, through that email notification. So it's just something to consider if you're so inclined. But anyway, yes, Joanna.
Could you just talk a little bit about the page on the right and your new research project, and then you're looking for new people to feature in various counties, please?
Thank you. What we did in the book, it was a labor of love. We did things about the 4 presidents. We did, where the books had been kept at the various places around Dedham, the registry. And we try to pick one person from each town, and tie it into a land record. Now, we picked the Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis. Dedham this was his country home, and there was a deed, so we picked him. But we had a lot of other interesting people. For instance, it's getting hotter and hotter. I still try to run. So at the Falmouth Road Race, I met Sunita Williams. She's an astronaut. Grew up in Needham, and she's in here. So some of it was people from history. Catherine Lee Bates, who everyone who has property down in Falmouth. She wrote America the Beautiful, but she had property in Wellesley. Helen Keller in Rentham. So we went through each of the towns to try to pick somebody and tie it in. We also have a page, it's in the book, about the Queen. The Queen owns a couple of properties in Norfolk County. And so we try to tie it to a deed, and again, put a little description of what the person was about, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm trying to do volume 2. I had so much fun doing volume 1, and it tied into, we had a great celebration. We had Trooper Dan Clark came by the registry, sang. June 20th, 1793 is when the county was established. But I'm working on volume 2, and I know around the corner, Dedham, I'm going to do Fisher Ames. There's a little sketch of them there out the back. And that's where the registry's located. It was Fisher Ames's house. But you might have some other suggestions for Dedham, or maybe the different property, different people. It's kind of hard sometimes. Dedham has a rich history of people, but trying to pick somebody. And some of the towns are, some of the towns were newer. For instance, everyone broke apart from Dedham. Norwood was South Dedham, Westwood, but Westwood, there wasn't a lot of history there. So actually, he playing sports, he actually coached a little bit in Norwood Little League. But Barry Reed from Westwood, he wrote The Verdict, and I love that movie. So, so sometimes the people we picked, it was just as simple as that. You just something that you liked. But we're going to try to do volume 2, and, it's been a lot of fun. We also, down the line, probably, tie it into sports figures. I also have talked to some of the veterans agents. We'd like to do one, for like veteran stories and tie it to a deed. Weymouth, has a number of Medal of Honor winners. So, we're going to do things like that. But volume 2 is going to be sort of like the first one, just trying to, tie in a deed with some historical figures. So if you have any suggestions, we'd be welcome. Would welcome it. But there's a lot of great information at the registry. I hope I've conveyed that. And if you have any questions about homesteads or discharges, or just need a copy, or just need us to look up anything, we have the computers here. We're tied into the registry right now, and we can look that information up for you. Yes?
How much of what goes on at the registry requires an attorney, or an accountant, an attorney versus somebody like myself who is not an attorney can walk in and wants to register, maybe it's a homestead exemption, but the fact of the matter is how much of what requires an attorney versus not?
There's a lot of things that people come in and we give them some guidance, and we're one of the few, you don't have to be an attorney to be the Register of Deeds. I happen to be, and we actually have 4 attorneys on staff, but that's unusual around the registries. A lot of the things, it's like anything, you can do yourself. Although, when I was in the law practice, I would always say to the people when they didn't want to pay the lawyer, I say, I hate paying my plumber, but when I have plumbing problems, so some things that are very sophisticated, you should get an attorney. But a lot of things, the homestead form is a relatively, you just need a copy of your deed, and you can walk in and record it, and we give people some guidance there. Doing the research, a lot of the people that do the research, it's by training, but for a group like this, you're not certifying title to the bank, so you can get in, use the information that's in that green folder, or just come by the registry. Sometimes there's a lot of the people that are at those computers don't work for the registry, the title examiners, but they are, pretty decent people about, if you catch them at the good time to try to help you, they'll help you out a little bit, as will our customer service staff. So you don't have to be for legal things like, putting trusts together and everything like that, I always tell people, you really, the biggest asset you have is your home. You really, probably should have someone take a look at it. And we have seen people come in and try to do deeds on their own, and sometimes that, changing a word here and there can change, do you own the property jointly? Well, that means if you die, your spouse gets the property. But if you mistakenly put that you owned it as tenants in common, you've split the property in half, So there's little things like that if you're dealing with deeds and legal documents, you might want to have an attorney. But a lot of things, the research that we're talking about, you can do it. Again, you're not certifying title to a bank. For the people here, I call it the poor person's title search. Every deed has a deed description and usually a book and page reference. So when you bought your home, the seller put a deed reference. Well, you enter that deed, that reference. It takes you back to the deed where they got the property from. And you can sometimes hopscotch back all the way back to 1793 if you get lucky enough on the references. So for something like research, you don't need to be an attorney. But I'd be remiss to say that if you're drafting deeds or a trust or something like that, you really should get counsel.
So do you have title examiners on staff, or how would one find a title examiner? How would you go about it?
If you go to our website, we don't have title examiners on staff, although the attorneys that we have experience doing titles and things like that. And one of the attorneys actually came from the land court, where he was a title examiner for the land court. The land court's in Boston. 80% of Norfolk County's land is recorded land, but 20% is land court or registered land. So we have someone on staff who is actually a title examiner and an attorney for the land court and used to do detailed title searches. So he's a good resource. If you need to get a title examiner, if they ask us to, we don't make any judgment as to who's better or who's not. But if you go on our website, we have a list of title examiners. That's their job. Some of them are attorneys, some of them are not. Some of them have been doing it for years. It's a kind of a skill that they develop. But on our website, if you need to get in touch with the title examiner, and some of them are right here in Dedham, have offices here in Dedham, that information is on the website.
And they will charge you.
Yes, because those title examiners a lot of times are working for attorneys. When you go to buy your house or refinance, the attorney kind of gets them to do a lot of the title work. But yes, they might, it's a business. Excuse me, it's a business, but maybe they'll help you out a little bit. Yes.
So what's the difference between registered land and whatever the other one was?
Good question. The question was, what's the difference between registered land and recorded land? What happens? Registered land in Massachusetts was authorized by the state legislature in 1899. The first document that was recorded in the land court here in Dedham was 1901. What that system did was set up in Boston under the land court registered land. Somebody took the time to register it. And it started, as I said, in Norfolk County. The first document was 1901. Now, why would someone do that? It's a very expensive process. The petitioner has to get an attorney, an engineer, do title search. They petitioned the land court to get it registered. And I think the reason they did it and the reason they created the land court was there was probably title problems. And what happened is when the land court, in essence, blessed that property, you get a certificate of title. And so the lawyers know whether it's registered land or recorded. Most consumers don't. The deeds all look the same. Everyone's signing the papers. They just, hey, do I own the house? Yeah, you do. But 20% of it's on the recorded land side, and 80% is on the recorded land side. 20% is land court. And I really tell people it's an accident of history, and we can look it up for you whether you're And actually, if you're doing research on your own, when you do the research, go on the 80% side, because when we do these seminars, some people are like, I can't find my property. Well, you got to go to the land court side. It's two separate systems. It's all integrated on our computer system, but you got to take a look. So why is it registered? Somebody took the time to do it, and I think it was because of title issues, and that's pretty much it. There are some little, again, hidden benefits if it's registered. It's an expensive process, so there's a trend now it's a very rigorous process too. When I was an attorney back in the day, when you had land court, you're going to record it, you would hold your breath because it was, very stringent standards. You just wanted to get the thing recorded, and they have so many rules. But there are some hidden protections. For instance, I have recorded land in Norwood. If someone put a fence on my property, took half my property and could prove it for 21 years, they take the property by adverse possession. But if it's registered land, you cannot adversely possess registered land. So if someone did that, it wouldn't do it. So there's little things like that. But for most people, it's accident history. The attorneys that are doing the research know whether it's registered or recorded. But but that's a good question. And thanks. Yes.
I'm surprised to learn that the Queen has property in Dedham or in the county.
Norfolk County, yes.
Yes, what does she own?
Well, if you go to the second to last page, we have the Nobel Prize winners on the right-hand side, but she bought the property for the Canadian Council in Wellesley, so it's a couple of houses, but it's for the Canadian consulate. But it was interesting to read. The Queen owns a lot of property. Is the legal owner of about millions of acres of land. 1/6 of the Earth's non-ocean surface is owned by the Queen. So they do pretty well. But there was a lot of good, interesting tidbits like that. But so the Queen. It's not here in Dedham, but it's property in Wellesley.
We have Dedham, England. There is a Dedham, England.
Oh, okay, Dedham. Oh, all right.
That's how I assume we got the name of Dedham.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's great. Well,
Maybe she'll come.
A lot better speaker than Bill O'Donnell. Yeah, if you get the Queen here, huh? Yeah. Well, it's funny. We did send the books out, and who was very gracious, and God rest his soul, was George Herbert Walker Bush, which is why we thank him here. He sent us a picture of the dedication, and he signed it. When his birthplace was dedicated in 1997. So maybe the Queen. We sent her a book, but George Bush actually sent us a note. About the book prior to his passing, but so who knows? But well, if you have any questions, we'll be around. If you need us to look up any information, if you need a copy of your deed, or you want to check a mortgage discharge, or just any questions like that, Bob and Alicia are here from my office. We'll try to do it. And again, thank you so much for having me. I think you're so lucky to have this. This is a real jewel, and it was a real privilege to speak here. So thank you. Yes.